Welcome to Ambient Discourses, conversations with musicians and composers who create musical experiences and sonic landscapes. My guest on the program is TJ Dumser from the ambient project Six Missing. We had a phenomenal conversation. Of course, we talked about his brand new album that he has coming out tomorrow, December 15th, 2023. The album is entitled Here for Now, and it's a tremendous album from what I've heard already, and it's just delightful, and I'm excited to share it with you. Plus, our conversation spans through the topics of meditation, mindfulness, and being present, plus giving yourself space and presence in the midst of the social media nutsness that we find ourselves in. But I'm excited to share this conversation with you. Let's get right to it, shall we? I present my conversation with TJ Dumser of Six Missing. All right, well, welcome, TJ. Welcome to Ambient Discourses. It's just such a delight to have you on the podcast here. And I was introduced to your brand new album, Here for Now, which is coming out tomorrow. And when I first took a listen to it, I was just spellbound because I loved all of the articulations, the sounds. It was like something I haven't heard. You know how there's a lot of us ambient musicians, we kind of fall on, a lot of the good tried and true standards of what makes, components of an ambient composition. You've got lots of delay and reverb and kind of a droney thing, but you had a lot of nice little articulations and sounds in there, and that it was really calming, and it was very it just provided a really beautiful space. And it's for that reason I'm just really excited to have you here on the program and have a conversation with you.
Oh, well, I couldn't be happier to be here with you. I love talking about all things music and life and all that. So it was really just a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you so much for the kind words about the record, too. I think just to touch upon what you were saying about how it feels maybe, hopefully, a little bit different than some of the ambient music that's out there today is I think that this whole record was sort of the totality of my musical experience up until this point. So when I first started, I started as a guitarist, and I was into classic rock, and I was listening to the classic rock greats like Zeppelin and AC/DC and those Eric Clapton, like the guitar god type of people. And I was playing in bands, and I was in vocal groups and all of this. And then as time went on, and I started finding delay pedals and started finding effect pedals in general, that's where I started to get really into this whole idea of soundscape and mood creation. And I went down that path for a few releases. And on this one, I wanted to bring back in like the beginning, the kind of all of the formative years, if you will, into the record by bringing in guitar, by bringing in, field recordings, by bringing in a little bit of melody. So I'm really happy to hear that came across in that way.
Yeah, I loved the acoustic guitar, and it was a pleasant surprise because you don't hear a lot of acoustic guitar, and usually when you do, I don't want to say that it's done improperly, but it's brought in as is, and that it's just has kind of a different sonic space. And I think the way that you approached it with making it much more fluid and open, and it just an area. I think it was a really nice addition to it. I mean, that's one of the pieces that I picked up that for me was just a nice treat having the guitar in there. What were some of when you were getting into initially like field recordings, and were there other artists or projects that you were gleaning inspiration from?
So it's kind of funny. It's like I didn't really find myself getting into ambient music because of any particular artists. I never was listening to ambient music. I never knew that that really was a thing for a while, for a long time. I think that when I started creating what my sound became, it wasn't until I started sharing it that people told me that there's like, hey, there's this whole big scene here that's been here for decades, that they're, you know, the giants in that, you know, Eno and Harold Budd and Tangerine Dream. And so I never knew about all of that. So I was coming at it from this perspective of like this guitarist brain that found all of these toys, and just the way that I hear and experience the world, which is through sound, really. And that's what I do, like in my day job. I'm a sound designer, so I'm always listening, and I'm always hearing the ingredients that make up the world that we live in. And so when I was able to find these tools that allowed me to express myself in ways other than just a guitar, I was hooked. I was just hook, line, and sinker, like in. And then it was only after I started releasing music did I start to find all of this community, all of these artists that were creating in this way. To actually, like, just the past weekend, I was on a plane to LA, and I was reading Synth History, which is this magazine. And in it, they were interviewing a whole bunch of different artists, and they were all talking about the, I'm going to butcher this name, the Cocteau Twins. And I was like, you know, I've seen that band name, I've seen the artist name come up so much, but I've never actually listened to who they are. So I started listening to them, and I was like, oh wow, they did this record with Harold Budd. And as I'm listening to it, I'm like, whoa, this is my sound, and I didn't even know it was my sound. And it's like, wow, this has kind of just been out there this whole time. So to your question, was there anybody that really drove me into it? Was I gleaning inspiration from anyone? I think I was just taking inspiration from like my own experience and awareness that comes through kind of awareness in meditation of just sound, smells, touch, taste, anything that takes you out of your kind of egoic thinking mind. And when I started paying more attention in that way to just our day-to-day, all of the sounds around us, that's what really drove me further into this type of music and this type of creation of blending field recordings with all of these, maybe like you said, atypical sounds in the music, acoustic guitar with synthesizers and, you know, generative music and all of that. So that's kind of how I found myself there.
That's really fascinating. So with your meditation practice, did you how did you find that changed how you listen to music or how you make music? What way did that have an effect on you?
I think that it affected the way that I wrote, the way that I created, really finding those little windows of awareness, of being in the actual moment and trying to create from there is how that really changed for me. Because before that, leading up to it, and there's always still a side of our brain as a human that wants to be like, this will sound cool, right? People will like this part if I do this, or as opposed to that. But I think that as I started to trust in the process a little bit more of being kind of centered and dropping in, if you will, I started to create more in shorter bursts. So when those windows were open, I would go with it. And when they were closed, I would do maybe other aspects of the music, editing, mixing, the things that don't really take the true spark of inspiration for me. And when those windows would open, that's when I'd be frantically running to like capture the magic, put the lightning in the bottle type of thing. So the meditation really has attuned to, or has tuned me into knowing when to put my foot on the gas and when to take it off. And I think that applies really to life as well. And you mentioned that you're a meditation practicer as well, and I think that it's just such a useful tool to being a human being. Is just we're inundated with so much data all the time, so much raw data coming into our eyes, our brains, and to get to a place where you can step out of that and look at the whole experience as almost like the water in the glass as opposed to the straw in the water in the glass. That's I think everybody should really try it at least, once.
I you are preaching to the choir there. It's for me, it is the same. It's such a very useful tool in so many different ways. And of course, it's not for everyone. I know people that really struggle with meditation and trying to focus. I'm still kind of the opinion that I think anyone can really do it. It just takes, us all different amounts of time to really cross that initial threshold of pain of like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I've been sitting here for 5 minutes and I can't do it. But I found that it really, I love how it slows your brain down. I mean, your thoughts are still cramming through, but but when you're able to stop and observe your thoughts, and practice that, and also practicing, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation on this, vipassana meditation, where it's the mindfulness of the sensations all throughout your body, from head to toe, and this really slow inventory, and those practices alone have really heightened my awareness and my presence. And so even the act of sitting down to, or going for a walk and listening to someone's album, like for example, your new album, Here From Now, it gives you so much more focus and attentiveness, and you pick up on so much more. I think that's that it seems like a no-brainer for a musician to really
great choice of words there too, because that's kind of it. Is like I agree with you. I don't think that meditation is kind of like the silver bullet, if you will, for everyone. I think, though, however, that there are meditative acts that people maybe do without realizing it. So like if it's something where you sit and you like to write, if you sit and you doodle, or you go for walks, or you like to go for a run, or maybe you sit down and you have a coffee in the morning and you're listening to the radio, you're watching television even, like these are all things that I think are really just like little signposts along the way of showing you like, hey, there's more here. And if you choose to kind of like pull on that thread and see where it leads, like it's just there for you. And that's really, in the past few years, that's really where I've tried to take the direction of Six Missing, is I merely want to be a signpost where people, my happiest moments are when someone who's never listened to ambient music before, like take for instance my father, will send me a record or send me a message and be like, hey, I sat down with my eyes closed and I listened to this and I felt like I was floating. And like, I'm like, hey, that is it. That's it. You did it. Like, that's the magic of this. That's all I'm trying to do, is just give people a moment to just, even if, like you said, you can't stop your thoughts, but if you can sit and realize how many thoughts you have, while that could be a very maybe stressful, anxious, triggering thing for some people, the more you do that, the more comfortable you become with realizing, like, it's always happening. It's always going. I can't slow this down because I'm a human being living in the world. But what I can do is choose to realize, like, hey, you know what? I can step on the side of the stream of that flowing river and just watch some of them go by. And I don't have to get caught up in them. I don't have to associate or draw my sense of self from these thoughts. And so I know I'm talking about like big concepts here, but really what it is just like creating the music to give people space to just take that breath. And that's why I do what I do. And that's why I feel like it's so important to me, and why, you know, I would be doing it if no one was listening. It's just something I feel like I have to do. So yeah.
There's an important piece there that I really hope people pick out, the subtlety in what you described. That the act of doing something, regardless if there's an audience. Because we all struggle, especially as artists, well, everyone does, but we all struggle with the idea of ego. And I know in meditation and other similar practices, there's the idea of lessening the ego or bringing it into balance. Some traditions even altogether want to dismantle the ego, which I'm of the persuasion that's a little self-destructive to an extreme. But there's something when you can bring your ego into balance and understand who you are on a much larger scale, and that part of who you are is verbness or doingness or beingness, and not so much noun. This is what I am. I am a musician, or I am a web developer. I'm a dad. I am, you know, we have these roles, but where I'm going with this, though, is that part of who we are is creator. It is just a part of what we do, a part of who we are. And this is why I think like the music industry is kind of a little backwards. You know, we're celebrating the ego as opposed to celebrating simply the process of creating, of expression, of manifesting whatever resonance you're picking up on. In, you know, it's kind of liken it, you know, we are a source of fire, a source of flame, of energy, and the things that we create is kind of like the smoke from the campfire. It's beautiful and it's so wonderful in itself, but the source from where it all flows, I think, is something that would really help us as musicians to steer back and realize, because we get really, I don't know about you, but I get hung up, in the past I've really been hung up on numbers and trying to play the game and get all the social media posts out there, and it's nauseating and exhausting.
Oh yeah, I mean, you are opening a door to a conversation that I have probably too many thoughts on right now. So I will try to distill maybe some of the more important aspects of what I'm thinking about. But yeah, exactly what you're saying is resonating with me so much. And especially because of the time of year that this is right now, we're kind of at a natural winding down. We do this natural reflection on the year, taking stock of how did I do? How are things? How did, for artists or business owners or working at a job, like how did this year, what was the trajectory? Did I do better than the year before? And it's so hard because it's not this straight line ever in life. It's a sine wave. It goes up, it goes down, and it's just part of the whole journey, is really accepting and realizing you're just in this ride. You're on this ride right now and making the best of it that you can. And that's why, like, creating and making art in any way, visual, audio, literature, I just feel like it's such a shame that as human beings, we can't make a living from that, really. Even at the point where a lot of musicians, there's this top tier, which is, the musicians that could put out a piece of music and streams within the first couple of hours, and talking about like the pop industry with the giants of like Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift and all of this. But then there's a ton of people that are doing, from the outside perspective, doing really well. And I know I've had moments where I've looked at artists that I look up to and realized, like, wow, they are maybe also renting their apartment. Maybe they couldn't buy their house from right. Just this one source of income. And so seeing all of this stuff, and again, I apologize, I know this is turning into a little bit of a soup of ideas here, but it's all related. I think what I'm getting down to is social media, it has this effect sometimes of showing, of kind of hijacking our thoughts, hijacking our sense of joy. I mean, how many times have you maybe done something where I feel really good about that? I felt great about this, and that's a nice day, and I felt happy that I figured this thing out, and that's all I really need. And then you go on to maybe social media or something like that, and you go, oh shit, this guy did this thing, or this girl did this thing, and like, damn, now I should be doing that. And that whole idea of like, I should be doing this, totally robbed you of your joy that you had from yourself. And I guess what I'm getting at is just creating for the sake of creating. And it doesn't have to be this neat package of an album like I have right now. It could be this, sitting down and just playing for yourself and finding the fulfillment in that. And I think that's why I love having conversations with people like you about this, because I feel like as a younger artist, when I was coming up, and even now, it's like I would have wanted to hear that from the people that I was looking up to, if they were like, hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. Like, I think that it's just really important to show the full picture instead of the highlight reel that is very obviously the highlight reel,
100%. I mean, that is spot on. I don't care how soupy this soup gets, but it's true. It's it's one thing that's kind of amusing, and this is related to the soupy mess of social media and our presence on it, is you can feel it's the tension is palpable when you go on, because it's you can almost feel everyone's general collective frustration that something is not right about me, or something is not right about this life or this existence, and everyone is clamoring to try and post the solution. But where the solution, I think, really has nothing to do with what kind of hot take or posting you're going to have. It's backing up, giving yourself some space to quiet down, quiet your mind down, quiet your heart down, observe your breath, and return to the moment. You mentioned in one of your press releases, you mentioned Ram Dass, and he's been one that I've been listening to avidly, not because I'm a fanboy, but because I really like how he challenges my sensibilities with different ideas and forces me into a position of, all right, let's explore these things. Let's get past my judgments. Let's get past my preconceptions, my preconceived ideas of what I think, of how I think the world works. And he kind of challenges those things. But that mantra of his, be here now, that has become my answer to almost everything now. Whenever I'm caught up in my own drama, be here now. Just be present. Just be present. Because if I'm present, I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not obsessing about something that happened 3 days ago and I'm still mulling it over in my mind. Or I'm not worried about the future or clinging for things. I'm not striving. I'm not reaching, and just being. And in that space of just being, there is no and this is going to challenge some sensibilities, but there is no right or wrong. It's just as I've heard one neuroscientist lecturer, he had said something to the effect of that this present moment in this consciousness is all it is the infinite possibility of now. Like, there is so much that can happen now in this moment. Infinite, what's going to happen? I don't know. It's not for us. It's not for us to know, I guess, or decide. Or maybe
right.
It is, but.
And I agree with you. And I think that the thing about the mantra "be here now" is each one of the words could stand alone as its own kind of directive. And when you put them together, it becomes even more powerful. And I completely agree in that we had spoken about just earlier, kind of like maybe the fallacy of ego dissolving the ego entirely is maybe not the most beneficial thing, because you still have to be a human being participating in society these days. And the people that are truly teachers are, I think, very few and far between. I think that a lot of people would like to maybe be, but when you talk about, Eckhart Tolle or Ram Dass, and these teachers that have truly maybe achieved this sense of destroying their ego, that's wonderful, but they are teachers, and we all can't be that way, because we would probably drop out of society, because it all doesn't make sense if you really start thinking about it. We have paper currency that allows me to have something more than this other person. It really doesn't make sense. So I think that it's all about the balance, like you were talking about, and keeping the ego in check. And really just, it's not anything that you can make yourself feel bad about. You're a human being. You will forget. So it's all about just it's just about remembering to come back to this moment. And the more you can do that, the easier coming back to that moment becomes. And the more comfortable you can get existing in just the moment that you're in. And again, not to make like the less than elegant loop back to the record. I mean, that is what I'm trying to do, is just have these little kind of like strings on your finger, this little reminder to be like, oh yeah, okay, I can just take a minute. And at the very beginning of our conversation, we talked about how we're being forced as creative people in this 24-hour incessant data type of society that we're in right now to be very bite-sized, to be very headliney. And I think that ambient music can be very spacious and very unhurried. And I mean, I have 18-minute tracks and 18-minute songs and all of that. But I was finding, talking about balance, I was figuring out I want to reach a broader audience. I want more people to know about my project, my music, so that I can maybe help people get this moment, find these moments. So how can I do that? And it's the kind of learning over the past 6 years of how to use the edit tool in my brain, and how to be a little bit more concise, and how to maybe just be exactly what you said about the be here now, just having it be just that little nudge, that little reminder, to be like, hey, just come back. And that's what I've been trying to do, as opposed to have these a lot of my tracks start as 20-minute tracks and they end up as 4 minutes. But just getting a little bit more concise and finding that balance is what I'm trying to do these days.
I like what you're doing with the idea of really trying to introduce new people into this space and into some of the ideas, and that's it's such a beautiful style, and it is entirely utilitarian. It can serve such wonderful purposes, and yet it can also stand all on its own and be its own experience. I love the thing. I'm such a fanboy with ambient music, but I love the facet of it where it allows you the space to let your imagination create your own universe. It's
I love that.
I've had experiences now where I've listened to some people's albums, and this doesn't happen with all albums I listen to, but once in a while I will just start to get very specific imagery come to my mind, and it's usually from my own experiences. And this kind of points to how the brain works. We have this observer brain that's just observing the universe without judgment, without filters, whatever. And then through it all, it just kind of comes into this primordial soup of evolution, of like all your lineage, your parental history, your school and friends you had, and ideas that you were inundated with, and I think that the ambient music is great because it gives you space to try and slow all of those different feeding mechanisms into how we project out into the universe. And that probably sounded pretty woo-woo, but the idea of being able to stop and observe and allow the mind to play, allow the mind to explore, and see what the different resonances and frequencies do for your imagination. What does it do? Just try it out. I mean, the mind is this infinite landscape that I think is just waiting to be tapped into, and I think that the music, that we've come to identify as ambient music, is a great gateway into exploring that space.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I don't think that there's any coincidence that ambient music has become more popular in the past few years. I mean, look at all that we've gone through as human beings in the last few years in general. And even to today, I mean, you look at the headlines, it's just awful. Everything, it seems like it's just crazy death and war and just general horribleness. And then you'll be scrolling past somebody that is an influencer who has this couch they want to sell you, and it's just this whiplash as human beings, I think, that we're experiencing. So I don't think there's any real coincidence that people are looking for that little exhale, that way to just unplug a little bit here and there. I mean, music can bring you there. Reading can bring you there. even just good conversation can bring you there. I think that meditation in general helps me. I also practice flotation therapy, which is kind of like this. I'm sure you've probably heard of it, but it's this float tank where you lay in 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in complete silence and complete darkness, and it is the most surreal, otherworldly experience of just hearing your own body, being with your own body, and realizing that's what's with you all the time.
Yeah.
And we have so many external stimuli coming in that we forget that there's this thing right here that is, just loving us, just taking care of us, and breathing all on your own. And hopefully we treat our bodies well so that they can treat us. This cycle. I don't know. Have you ever floated or anything like that?
I have not tried the sensory deprivation tanks, but that sounds like that'll be my jam right there. Man, I just love any sort of experience that kind of takes me out of the default manufacturer's programming. Like get anything to peel back some of the filters because our mind is very reductionist. It reduces everything down to bite-sized chunks, manageable chunks, so that we don't go mad. But anything that kind of peels back some of those layers to kind of get a wider appreciation for how magnificent our bodies are, how spellbinding our mind is, and the further connectedness of everything. I think that I'm a big fan of anything that is going to help illuminate our minds and our eyes to see how unified we really are in it all, and that skin, that this barrier is just an illusion, that through it all there's energy that's flowing between us, and it's not even in a woo-woo way, but like on a very I'm thinking like on the quantum level of how some of the quantum science has really been starting to affirm that there is stuff that's going on this level that we just don't understand. It seems to have consciousness, because when we watch this quark particle, it does one thing in one circumstance, but the minute we're watching it, it says, no, I'm going to do this instead. How weird is that? And
it's magic, really. Yeah. It's like there is magic out there, and like that is, I'm all in on getting woo woo about it all. I had read, I don't know where I read this, but it was a really nice sentiment, a really beautiful quote that was kind of like, we are all the shattered glass from the same window pane. Yeah. So we all kind of are the same in a way, and we've just broken apart, and we are all these little pieces running around, but we're the same thing of just, a wave rising and falling from the ocean is still part of the ocean. And you hear astronauts talk about the overview effect when they are out in space looking at Earth, and the overwhelming sensation that they have. They're, kind of being like, well, what the hell are we, why are we all trying to kill each other? Why are we all at war with each other? Why are there starving people in this part of the world, but not in this part of the world? And why are there billionaires here and there are people on the street here? And I love when NASA shows those photos, like from the Webb telescope, and you see what we really are in the grand scheme of things. And it just, honestly, it doesn't overwhelm me. It makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
Because it's like, all of this is just noise. It's all just nonsense. And, we can't change it overnight. But that is how important art is to me, is it feels like this is my one way that I can contribute something positive to the human experience. And like it is that serious for me. And that's why I've said earlier, like, I would be doing that if there were 0 listeners or if there were 1 billion listeners, and it would just be the same for me. Like, I have to do this.
Yep. Yeah. I'm with you 100%. I mean, if I could be even more with you on this, I would. I mean, that is quintessentially the thing. It's once you've kind of caught a glimpse of how much we've been asleep at the wheel as a species, on autopilot, and kind of taking for granted all of the things around us as being real without really stopping to ask some tough questions and really start to observe, why the heck are we doing this to ourselves? I mean, I get it. You know, neurophysicists and whatnot, or neural researchers have, basically identified this as just it's a reaching. You feel like you're clinging to what you can't possess, time. You know, and you feel that there is, it's a shortage mentality is what it is. It's this idea that I don't have enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough clothes. I don't have enough followers on Spotify. I don't have enough. And it's this, I don't have enough culture that is destroying us. It's absolutely. That's where war comes from. Well, I got to have more land. I got to have more power. But the reality is that, this is why I'm all for anything that's going to help you expand your states of consciousness to be able to see the greater depth of it all, because the reality is that things that we do have a ripple effect on one another, even the vibration. So personal anecdote to illustrate this,
please.
I've been working really hard on myself, and by really hard I mean I've been really attentive to intentionally every day going, all right, how do we do today? How could I really be more mindful, and how can I be more gentle in my in how I carry myself? How can I speak more softly to my family, to be less that loud voice, less that domineering, controlling father figure or husband figure? And in the process of meditating every day, and sometimes I just need to have really short meditation sessions, and sometimes I have really lengthy ones. The longest one that I lost myself into was like 3 or 4 hours long. I just completely lost myself into the space. But in those spaces, I've experienced substantial, I don't like to use the word healing, but substantial pivots where you start to see things from a much different angle that is without judgment, that's without opinion, and in the process of that, of seeing that I am sufficient in myself, that my family is sufficient in myself, in themselves. I don't need to change them. I don't need to be domineering. I don't need to speak up. I don't have to have my voice heard. I don't have to have my opinion heard. I can just be with my family, be love, be kindness, be gentleness, and being present in that mode of living. That has really transformed, I think, my family. I see how they respond to me now. It's over time, there's been this gentleness that started to creep into our family, and it's like, wow, this is really nice. I could get used to this. But the only way it is happening is because I'm letting my ego take the back seat. It's still there, and I'm trying to be kind. it was like a reel I posted. It's, you know how there's two sides to the self-help or the self-improvement, which is also self-acceptance. You need to have both of those things in play. Accepting who you are at this moment, and that you are a product of everything that has preceded before you. So it is no wonder why we respond the way we do to stimulus. You know, like you get some of these people that they're road raging, or they're behaving really poorly in public. You know, they're only doing what comes natural to them because of how their life proceeded before them. All of the systems that they'd grown up into, the ideas and the beliefs, and I'm sorry that I'm monologuing here, but it's
not at all.
This is really, I think, is important for our species to understand that we can let all that go. We can let go of the clinging to have our opinion heard, to have our voice heard, because in the end, it doesn't change anything. I express my opinion. No one changes. In fact, if anything, people might get upset, you know, or they might think, well, I've got my own opinion, and my opinion says this, and then that's where it devolves. As opposed to just learning how to be and appreciate one another, and to, I don't know, figure out how do we love in that space. You know?
I feel like you're talking about like this softening of the experience, like just this loosening of the kind of hard exterior, the hard shell. And this is something that, like I said, ebbs and flows. I mean, I had been in this state of really understanding and having sympathy and having patience for other humans, of thinking like if somebody was, you know, being an asshole in the grocery store or on the road or something like that, my default was going to, well, maybe they had a rough day. Maybe their family is like giving them a lot of stress. Maybe they have a sick relative. Maybe their pet is not doing well. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they are frustrated by something. Maybe somebody did something to them. And having that kind of like softening for other people does have an effect outwardly, like you said, as well as inwardly. And if we could all get to that, I think even just a little bit, you start to loosen the hard exterior, and having it be so other from each other, and be more that we are here together. And that's an incredibly difficult thing to do, and I don't succeed at that even, you know, as well as I used to, maybe. And it's because, you know, you get older and you get more responsibilities, so you have more stress and the stakes are a bit higher. So things start to press down on you, and as they get compacted, you become tougher, and we lose that sense of just togetherness. Or as a anecdote a little bit here, we've been rewatching Seinfeld, which is just a great show, but he has a joke in it which I think was really perfect, is that we need to be more like children, in that a kid doesn't say, well, you know, why are we friends? It's just because you're here. You're my friend because you're here. You live next door, come play, come on over, now we're friends. As an adult, that's like, well, what do you do? Where are you from? Do I like the same things that you do? Do we have the same point of view? Like all of these questions that keep us apart. And I think we need to find more of that childlike play in life if we can. I know it's a hard thing to do, and you know, I think it's just really important and like vital to being someone that is a person that other people want to maybe be around, and not think that, oh, that guy's such a jerk or something like that.
So what do you feel
But
are some of the antidotes to help you get to that place of being more childlike? What are some things that you think that people can do?
Oh my gosh, what a question. I think probably do more of the things that you enjoy. Do more of the stuff that you love for the sake of doing it because you love it. And that's what I do with my music. I mean, I think a lot of people are surprised to hear that I have a job outside of this. Like, this is not my full-time thing. My full-time thing has been my work and my job, which has allowed me to have the breath and the space for the music, which I feel very fortunate to be able to do. I know that not everybody's in that position, but, I think that the reason why there's been so much flow to the project is because I just was doing it because I loved it and I enjoyed it. So I guess to put a bow on that, it would be just find the things that you really love for no reason other than the fact that you just love it. Just do that.
Yeah. Yep. And it's in a good healthy dose of you don't have to solve the world. You don't have to solve the world's problems. You don't have to fix the world. I don't know about you and your exploration of consciousness and meditation, if you've wrestled through this yet or not, but now I'm losing it. I was watching the thought go, no, don't go.
No, I mean, you did make me think of something though. If you don't,
go for it. Go for it.
Jump in. Something that we've kind of been talking about this whole time is, or we've touched upon it, but the fact that there's all of this neuroscience, all this psychology, all of this study of the human existence, and how I think social media has taken that all into account and really flipped that on its head to make it so that we feel like if I really enjoy sitting and painting, then I have to be able to show it to somebody. And instead of just doing it for myself, and that thought, I said before, it kind of just robs you of the joy, the fulfillment. Like, you are enough just sitting there and painting, just sitting there and reading. Like, you existing, you being is a full enough picture. And I've caught myself many times, and I'm sure you have too. Like, we're both in these kind of forward facing roles where we need, to communicate with people. But I've caught myself thinking, like, been in the studio and playing and being like, this is so much fun. This is great. And I'm not even recording it. I'm not filming it. But then that thought will creep in my mind, like, oh, but I should probably show that I'm being busy.
Right.
And then I'm just like, oh, wow, what a slippery little snake. Like, we need to allow ourselves those moments to just, again, childlike play, right? Like, just playing for the sake of playing, and
it's kind of like we're that 8-year-old again, and we've just finished making that finger painting, and we have to show our parents to get that validation. And it's like we are still 8-year-olds,
right?
But now, instead of vying for validation from our parents, we need it from complete strangers. And how how messed up is that this has become normal for us, that in order to feel validated for making something beautiful, we have to post about it. It's how weird. Like, it is like when you finally stop and you jostle yourself enough to wake up and you're like, oh, this is backwards. I should just like, a rose doesn't post itself on Instagram and go, oh, look at me, I bloomed today. No, it does what it does because it's a rose. It roses, it blooms, it decays, right. it grows, and it dies, and it does all of the things that it is supposed to do. And the same for us. We have, because we're so different, and we all have many different things that interest us or resonate with us. Go do that thing. Go be that human being. Go and And this is another. So there's this guy I follow. Sadhguru, I think, is his name. He said this thing once. He's like, oh crap, I'm gonna lose it again. Oh man, the mind is so terrible sometimes when, like, I spend so much of my time meditating, trying to let my thoughts go, and now they go, and I'm like, wait, I need you. Come back here.
I need a few of you.
Yeah, that one was actually useful. One of the things he says, Sadhguru says, is he says, why do we work so hard? Stop working hard. Stop trying hard. Just inject love into what you're doing. So if you have a job, and it's thankless, try and inject some love into it, and presence into it, instead of trying to work really hard and be really serious. And that thought was really, I don't know, it's really transformative for me, because then it's like, it simplifies it. You're not, we don't have to get the approval. We don't have to post it on social media. I know that we're feeling like we're missing out, because there's that fear of missing out element there. But it's...
Well, and that's the tricky part about this, right?
Yeah.
Is I've met and connected with and worked with people in areas of the world that I've never even been to.
Yeah.
And that is an incredible thing. Like, the fact that I have that in the palm of my hand, literally communicating with somebody and on a different corner of the world, is with a completely different perspective, in a completely different, scenario. Some people that are in the middle of war at the moment, and here we are. I mean, I'm in Austin, but here we are, mostly seated, and we have this. Even just the fact that anybody that's listening right now has 60, 75 minutes to sit and listen, like, well done. You have more time in your day for yourself than you really imagine or you really realize. Like, you do, and we're very fortunate to be able to do that. But the point I was making is that that's why it's tricky, and that's why social media is so hard and a slippery slope and all of that, because there are a ton of positive benefits to it.
Yeah.
And there are ways, like us right now, we're not in the same room, but we're having a conversation about really huge, meaningful things, and like it'll affect my day in such a positive way after our conversation, and we're not together, and like that's an incredible feat, I think.
Yeah.
So to borrow your story about the rose, I think that's something to remember, is that the rose is always there, and it's there for you to discover its beauty when you clue into it. And when you do, you kind of have this moment where you're like, has that been there like that the whole time? And I just am noticing this now in this way. And for me, that's sound, that's music, that's like why I fell in love with ambient music too, is like you can get lost in this moment, in this track, and be like, how long has this been going on for? Wow, this transported me to a different place. That is like the magic of timeless, formless, just being, that is such a beautiful aspect of being a human being. But so to thread the needle here on the positive aspect of social media is like, share your stuff, because people do need it. People do need it, and you'll never know who will benefit from it. And if you do it with the sole intention of being like, hey, I'm getting my worth from the fact that one person liked this or 1,000 people liked this, then that's the wrong approach. I think you have to find the happiness and the fulfillment in yourself, and then people like the rose will come to your beauty in time. And that's all it really is. It's just patience, time, just being true to yourself.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I fully agree with that. In fact, there's when you really stop and give yourself, I think. Let me rephrase this. One thing that Ram Dass, to bring him back into the fold of this conversation, one of the things that he had dealt with this dance of ego and the dance of observer, of selfless, of the spirit, or whatever metaphor works for you. In a similar way, there is a delicate dance for us with social media, and one of the things that I think that Ram Dass has said before is that in the process, when you discover that you've been caught, and by caught I don't mean like caught stealing, or no, I mean like you've been caught up in the game. You got caught up in the way social media works. You get caught up in your ego. It's those moments that we need lots of tenderness and compassion for ourselves, because the brain is just doing what it's designed to do. It's taking all of the stimulus and going, all right, that's a lot. How can we pare this down to something more manageable? And unfortunately, in that process of paring down, you miss out on so much information. You miss out on all of the nuance, the subtleties of why people are saying what they say, or why they do what they do. And in the same for ourselves, when we're posting, if we get caught up in the game of, oh my God, all right, I'm babysitting the views here. Okay, how much? I'm only up to a dozen views. What? And give yourself love and compassion in the midst of that space, and go, all right, I've been caught. I got snagged by the game. Recognize it, and then pull yourself back. Take 5 minutes to meditate, or write, or do whatever practice works for you. Go for a walk. Anything to regain your sense of agency and your sense of just peace with who you are, and presence. And
yeah, you can always start again.
Yes.
And you continually have to. And becoming okay with that, and knowing that, yeah, I'm going to have to start again because I'll forget.
Yep.
And just knowing that you're free to, and that you haven't like lost progress, or you haven't climbed high up the mountain, now you have to start at the bottom again. It's just, you're just there, and the more you can come back to being there, probably the better you'll feel. But yeah, and that's, I think, the thing to remember, and I think something that I love so much about the teachings of Ram Dass is that it's not about this achieving mentality. It's not about getting to this next level. It's not about becoming something. It's becoming nothing, really. And just remembering that is that all you need to do is just come back to where you are. And there are many great tips to do something like that, but the first and easiest thing to do is just like take stock of where you are. Like, what do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? How does it feel? And those things alone bring you out of your brain and into your body and into the moment. And I think that's for me, that's creating music, going for walks, going for runs. But it can look like, anything for anyone. Even doing the dishes could be a very meditative practice. It's not a means to an end. It's what you're doing right now. Yeah. So pay attention.
That's true. And it could be anything at all. You just need to be present, and put some love into it. Put your love and your heart into it. And God, TJ, I've really loved this conversation. I'm really just enamored by it, and there's a lot here, and I really hope that, you know, at least my ego stayed sufficiently out of the way for people to glean on this. I really hope for us as a species, and even more specifically for us collectively as artists, as creators, that we wake the hell up, and, you know, that we find that just how connected we are as a species. And I think that we can course correct a lot of our stuff that we perceive as problems in our society, but it first has to start with us being present and waking up. And I'm just grateful for our time here, TJ. I just loved sharing this space and hearing your perspectives. One last question before to round things up.
Sure.
With all the musicians out there trying to find their own way, and from all of the things that you've learned, what are one or two, or maybe even three or four things that you have found to be some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned as a creator, as a musician, as engineer, whatever? What are some things that you think that bits of wisdom that you just have to share that would be really important for you?
Sure. Well, just first and foremost, yeah, I agree. This has been an amazing conversation, and I think that it's so important what you're doing, and it's so meaningful that you're holding a space to have this conversation, and that you share this with people, because it really is kind of, you know, if anybody can take one little nugget from this conversation, then I feel as though we've done a good job. So thank you very much for hosting it. As far as takeaways, things that I've learned, really just one or two is just patience. Things take the time that they will take, and in a lot of ways you cannot rush the process. There is no shortcut, despite what anyone will tell you. There's no short list of 5 ways to do whatever. It just takes the time that it takes, and it'll take you a different time that it'll take me to do those things. So that really goes to the second thing, which is just to trust yourself, and trust yourself, and that you can't compare yourself to what other people are doing, because they're on their own path in their own time. And that really applies, I think, to everything. And I'm sure there are more things, but I really just think patience and trust are the 2 things that I would hope that someone would take away from our conversation.
Oh my gosh, that's just wonderful, TJ. I just really appreciate you. I appreciate your music. And the new album, Here For Now, is so good. I can't wait to hear the full thing, because, you know, I'm teased along with how many tracks here? 4 or 5 or 6 tracks here.
Yeah, we had a few.
I'm like, all right, now I want to hear the rest. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
So, Here For Now drops tomorrow, and that is for those of you probably catching the archives. This is it drops December 15th, 2023, and you can find it on all of the socials as TJ. Where's a good URL that people can go check out your stuff?
Oh, I mostly hang out on Instagram, for better or worse. So my username is just SixMissing. But yeah, you can Google all permutations of that, and it's all out there, websites and Bandcamps and all of that. But sixmissing.com or Instagram at SixMissing.
Fantastic. I really am looking forward to this album. By the way, you also have a really healthy catalog. I spent a significant amount of time just diving back into some of your previous works, and it's just really wonderful music, and you create a generous space for the listener, and I can feel love and presence in it. And so keep it up, TJ. Thank you very much for
wow. Michael, thank you very much. And thank you so much for having me on it. It was really wonderful, and it was great to meet you and speak to you. And thank you for taking the time to be interested in what I'm doing.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Well, that was an absolutely fantastic conversation. My thanks to TJ Dumser of the Project 6 Missing. Thank you so much for sharing your music with me and the conversation and our time. I look forward to having another conversation with you in the future. It's just wonderful. My thanks also goes out to my friends over at the Nettwerk Music Group label. Thank you so much for sending TJ my way for the hookup and sending all the music. I just appreciate our relationship there. I hope you guys are doing well. You can find more music from TJ from Six Missing out at sixmissing.com, as well as sixmissing.bandcamp.com, where you can find all of his music out there available. Thank you so much, my friends, for tuning into Ambient Discourses, conversations with musicians and composers who create musical experiences in sonic landscapes. Until next time, keep creating, my friends.